would say is when you were talking about Yost, actually the character that I play, Cheryl, she died at 35 of heart failure. And when we heard that, we were just like shocked. Me and my mom. So anyway.
A small room, and she physically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous and had his hands like this.
A shocking Hollywood headline is making the rounds, and it connects Mel Gibson, Hayden Panettiere, and Jeffrey Epstein in a story that sounds almost impossible to believe. The claim is explosive. What did Hayden Panettiere allegedly see, and did Mel Gibson really know something about it? Before we go any further, there's an important distinction. The viral headline claims Gibson leaked information about what Panettiere supposedly witnessed on Epstein Island. But there is currently no credible evidence establishing that Gibson made such a revelation, nor reliable evidence showing that Panettiere was on Epstein's island. What is real is that Panettiere has recently been the subject of intense media attention after discussing an alleged disturbing incident involving a well-respected, Oscar-winning actor-director when she was 19. Reports say she described the person without publicly naming him. And that alone was enough to send the internet into detective mode. People immediately began throwing famous names into the conversation. One of those names was Mel Gibson. But speculation isn't proof. And that's exactly where this story gets dangerous, because once an unnamed celebrity is discussed online, people can quickly transform guesses into accusations. At the same time, Jeffrey Epstein's case has generated one of the largest collections of celebrity rumors and conspiracy theories in modern pop culture. Millions of pages of documents have been released or discussed publicly, creating an environment where unrelated celebrity stories can easily become connected online. So what is actually known? What did Panettiere say? Why did people start connecting her story to Epstein? And where does Mel Gibson really fit into this? Tonight, we are separating the documented facts from the viral speculation, examining why this story exploded, and looking at how one unnamed Hollywood allegation suddenly became connected to one of the most infamous scandals in history. Because the biggest question isn't simply, what did Hayden Panettiere see? It's this. Did she actually see anything connected to Epstein at all? Or has the internet created a connection that the available evidence simply doesn't support? The story surrounding Hayden Panettiere has taken a disturbing turn, but before connecting her experiences to Jeffrey Epstein or Mel Gibson, we need to separate what Hayden actually disclosed from what the internet is adding to the story. In her 2026 memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, Panettiere described several disturbing experiences from her years as a young actress. One of the most widely reported incidents happened when she was 19 years old. She wrote that an actor-director she described as well-respected and Oscar-winning exposed himself to her at a Hollywood party. She did not publicly identify the man. That revelation immediately created an internet frenzy. People began trying to identify the unnamed celebrity. And once social media started speculating, famous names were pulled into the conversation, including Mel Gibson. But there's an important problem with that leap. Panettiere did not publicly identify Mel Gibson as the man in that story. And there is no credible evidence establishing that Gibson was the person she described. That means we cannot responsibly turn online guesses into an accusation. What we can examine is why Panettiere's story resonated so strongly. She was a child actor who grew up inside Hollywood. By the time she was 19, she had already spent years working in an industry where powerful adults could have enormous influence over young performers. Her memoir describes multiple uncomfortable and traumatic experiences involving famous people and industry figures. In another incident, she recalled being taken into a room on a yacht when she was 18 and being pressured into a sexual situation involving a famous man. Again, she did not publicly identify the man. Those accounts are disturbing on their own. They don't require an Epstein connection to be serious. And that's exactly where the viral headline becomes problematic. The claim that Mel Gibson leaked what Hayden saw at Epstein Island suggests there is a documented connection between Panettiere, Gibson, and Epstein. The available credible reporting does not establish that. In fact, the sources covering Panettiere's memoir focus on her experiences in Hollywood, not an alleged visit to Epstein's Island. So why has Epstein suddenly entered the conversation? Part of the answer is obvious. The Epstein scandal has become one of the biggest repositories of celebrity speculation in modern culture. Whenever an unnamed celebrity allegation appears, people online often attempt to connect it to Epstein, Hollywood parties, famous actors, or other scandals. But a connection created by social media isn't automatically a connection supported by evidence. And that distinction matters enormously here. There's another heartbreaking element to this story. Panettiere died in August 2026 at the age of 36. Authorities said there were no signs of foul play, while her official cause and manner of death remained pending further investigation at the time of reporting. That has inevitably intensified public interest in her final interviews and memoir. But her death shouldn't turn speculation into fact. Her own words deserve to remain at the center of the story. And what those words reveal is already powerful. A young Hollywood performer described experiences she believed crossed serious boundaries. She chose not to name the people involved, explaining that some were famous enough that she might encounter them again, and that she wanted to protect herself and her company from potential lawsuits. That decision makes the internet's detective hunt even more complicated. Because the people she deliberately chose not to identify should not simply be named by social media speculation. So the real mystery isn't: did Mel Gibson reveal what Hayden saw on Epstein Island? The evidence doesn't establish that. The real question is, what exactly did Hayden Panettiere experience during her years in Hollywood, and why did she decide to reveal those experiences only now? And that is where the next part of this story becomes even more disturbing. The most disturbing part of Hayden Panettiere's story isn't actually the internet's guessing game. It's what she says happened before anyone started trying to identify the people involved. In her memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, Panettiere described multiple experiences from her years as a young performer that she viewed as deeply disturbing and exploitative. One involved an older, famous man on a yacht when she was 18. She described being placed in a room beside an undressed man and realizing that she was effectively trapped because they were out at sea. Then came the second account. At 19, Panettiere said she attended a private party where a man she described as a well-respected, Oscar-winning actor and director exposed himself to her. She deliberately left the man's identity out of the memoir. And that decision is incredibly important. Because almost immediately, the internet started doing what the actress had specifically avoided doing. People began compiling lists. They began matching ages. They began checking Oscar histories. They began comparing which famous actors were also directors around the period when Panettiere said the incident occurred. And eventually, names began circulating online. One of those names was Mel Gibson. But here's the line that cannot be crossed. Panettiere has not publicly identified Gibson as the man. There is no credible evidence establishing that he was the person she described. The fact that someone fits a handful of publicly available clues does not prove they were involved. That's why responsible reporting has continued to describe the individual as unidentified. But then the Epstein angle entered the conversation. And that's where an already serious story became something much larger online. Jeffrey Epstein's name has become almost synonymous with celebrity conspiracy theories, powerful people, secretive parties, and unanswered questions. So when a young actress describes disturbing experiences involving famous people, social media can quickly attempt to connect those experiences to Epstein. But a viral connection isn't evidence of a real connection. There is currently no reliable evidence establishing that Panettiere visited Epstein's island. There is also no credible evidence that Mel Gibson publicly revealed something Panettiere supposedly witnessed there. The exact headline exists online, but the evidence behind that headline isn't established by credible reporting. And that distinction matters even more now, because Panettiere died at the age of 36 in August 2026. Her death has caused renewed attention to her memoir and to the experiences she described in the months before her death. Recent reporting says authorities found no signs of foul play, while the circumstances surrounding her death were still being investigated. That tragedy has unfortunately created an even more intense environment for speculation. Every interview is being re-examined. Every old statement is being clipped. Every unnamed person in her memoir is being turned into a potential suspect. And every celebrity, who might vaguely fit the description, is being dragged into the discussion. But Panettiere's own reason for withholding names should not be forgotten. She explained that some of the people she wrote about were still connected to Hollywood, and that she wanted to protect herself from potential legal consequences and further problems. In other words, she made a deliberate decision not to identify them. That means the internet shouldn't make that decision for her. And there's another important lesson here. You don't need to connect Panettiere to Epstein to understand how serious her allegations about Hollywood culture were. Her accounts raise legitimate questions about what young performers can encounter when they are surrounded by older, more powerful people. They raise questions about boundaries. They raise questions about protection. And they raise questions about why someone might feel unable to identify an alleged offender publicly even years later. Those questions are real. The Epstein connection, however, remains unsupported. So the real mystery isn't what the internet thinks Mel Gibson knows. It's why so many people are trying to connect two separate stories without evidence proving they belong together. And that's where this story gets even more complicated, because once Panettiere's unnamed allegations became public, the internet didn't just start guessing about the actor. It started building an entire narrative around who else might have known what happened. And that's where the Mel Gibson claim became part of the viral storm. And this is where the viral story takes another dramatic turn. Because once Hayden Panettiere's memoir became public, people immediately began trying to identify the unnamed Hollywood figures she described. That investigation eventually spilled across social media, with different names being suggested by users. And now, videos are circulating with headlines claiming that Mel Gibson revealed what Panettiere supposedly saw on Epstein Island. One such video is currently circulating under almost exactly that title. But there's a major problem. The available evidence does not establish that Mel Gibson made such a revelation. In fact, the credible reporting about Panettiere's memoir focuses on something very different. Panettiere described an encounter when she was 19 involving a well-respected, Oscar-winning actor and director who allegedly exposed himself to her at a private party. She intentionally did not identify the person. That decision matters. Because once the identity was left out, the internet began filling the blank. People started creating lists of actors who might fit the description. Some social media users included Mel Gibson. Others suggested completely different names. But those guesses aren't evidence. And there is an even bigger problem with the Epstein portion of the story. The credible coverage of Panettiere's memoir does not establish that she visited Jeffrey Epstein's island. Her memoir describes disturbing experiences involving Hollywood figures, including an incident on a yacht and another involving the unnamed Oscar-winning actor. But that is not the same thing as establishing a connection to Epstein's private island. So how did the Epstein claim become attached to her story? The answer appears to be the modern celebrity rumor cycle. A shocking memoir comes out. An unnamed famous person is mentioned. Social media starts guessing. Then another notorious celebrity scandal gets connected to the story. Before long, the original account has been transformed into something much larger. And because Jeffrey Epstein remains one of the most infamous names in modern scandal reporting, attaching his name to almost any Hollywood mystery dramatically increases attention. That's exactly what appears to be happening here. But we have to be careful. There is a major difference between saying, Panettiere described disturbing experiences involving unidentified people in Hollywood, and saying, Panettiere witnessed something on Epstein Island and Mel Gibson exposed it. The first statement is supported by reporting about her memoir. The second has not been established by credible evidence. And that's not a minor distinction. It's the entire story. There's another important detail that makes Panettiere's decision to remain anonymous even more understandable. She explained that she didn't name certain people because they were famous individuals she might encounter again, and because she wanted to protect herself and her company from potential lawsuits. In other words, she deliberately chose not to turn her memoir into a public naming exercise. That means online speculation shouldn't be treated as though it came from Panettiere herself. And it certainly shouldn't be attributed to Mel Gibson without evidence that Gibson actually said it. The tragedy surrounding Panettiere's death has made this even more sensitive. She died at 36 on August 16, 2026, only months after publishing her memoir, and reporting says authorities found no signs of foul play. That timing has caused renewed interest in everything she wrote. But renewed interest doesn't make every online theory true. If anything, it makes accuracy more important. Her actual story is already disturbing enough. She described growing up in an industry where adults had enormous influence over her. She described inappropriate behavior. She described situations where she struggled to trust her own instincts, because she had been taught from childhood to accept being managed. Those experiences deserve serious discussion without adding unsupported connections. And that brings us back to Mel Gibson. At this point, the strongest evidence available shows that his name has been inserted into the online speculation, not that he publicly confirmed Panettiere's alleged Epstein connection. So the question becomes even more fascinating. If Gibson didn't actually reveal the alleged story, why are so many videos presenting it as though he did? And that leads directly into the final part, where we examine how celebrity rumors turn into seemingly confirmed stories once enough people repeat them. And this is where the viral version of the story needs to slow down. The headline claims that Mel Gibson leaked what Hayden Panettiere saw on Epstein Island. But the available reporting does not establish that. What is documented is that Panettiere's memoir described disturbing experiences from her years as a young Hollywood performer. She wrote about an incident involving an unnamed Oscar-winning actor and director when she was 19, and she also described another incident on a yacht involving a famous older man when she was 18. Those accounts are serious on their own. But neither account establishes that the events occurred on Jeffrey Epstein's island. And Panettiere did not publicly identify the Oscar-winning actor. In fact, reporting on her memoir specifically notes that she chose not to name the individual. That's an important line. Because social media has already started trying to solve the mystery for her. Names including Mel Gibson have appeared in online discussions because users believe certain clues could fit different Hollywood figures. But those are internet theories, not confirmations from Panettiere. And there is an even bigger problem with the Mel Gibson portion. A video using almost exactly the viral headline, Mel Gibson leaks what Hayden Panettiere saw at Epstein Island, does exist online. But the existence of that video doesn't prove that Gibson actually made the alleged revelation. That's the trap with celebrity content. A video title can make a question sound like a confirmed event. Then another account repeats the title. Then another creator discusses the claim. Eventually, viewers may believe that dozens of sources confirmed the story, when all of them may actually be repeating the same original claim. And that's why this story needs a clear separation between Panettiere's own account and everything that has been added afterward. Her memoir describes exploitation and disturbing experiences during her early years in Hollywood. The Wall Street Journal also reported that she wrote about an NBC executive kissing her when she was 16, and about being pressured into a sexual situation involving a famous singer-songwriter while she was 19. Those details reveal something genuinely troubling about the environment she experienced as a young performer. But they don't automatically establish a connection to Epstein. They don't establish that Mel Gibson was involved. And they don't establish that Gibson possessed secret information about an alleged visit to Epstein Island. That's where responsible storytelling matters. Because Panettiere's story deserves to be taken seriously without turning speculation into another accusation. And there is a particularly important reason to be careful now. Panettiere died in August 2026 at the age of 36. And recent reporting has renewed enormous public interest in her memoir and the experiences she described. The Wall Street Journal reported that authorities found no signs of foul play. Her death has understandably caused people to revisit her words. But grief and curiosity shouldn't become permission to invent connections. The strongest version of this story isn't. Mel Gibson exposed a secret about Epstein Island. The strongest version is. Hayden Panettiere left behind a memoir describing disturbing experiences in Hollywood, including encounters with unidentified powerful men, and the internet is now attempting to connect those accounts to celebrities and scandals without sufficient evidence. That's already a story worth discussing. It raises questions about the protection of young actors. It raises questions about power in Hollywood. It raises questions about why victims sometimes choose not to identify alleged perpetrators. And it raises a much larger question about the way celebrity scandals are investigated online. Because when an individual deliberately leaves a name out of their story, the internet shouldn't automatically fill in the blank. The mystery may remain a mystery. And until credible evidence says otherwise, the alleged Mel Gibson-Epstein connection should remain exactly where it belongs. In the category of online speculation, not established fact. So, what do you think about this disturbing Hollywood story? Do you believe the internet is uncovering legitimate questions surrounding Hayden Panettiere's experiences? Or have viral creators gone too far by connecting Mel Gibson and Jeffrey Epstein without credible evidence establishing those links? Hayden's own allegations about her experiences as a young actress are serious enough without adding claims she never publicly confirmed. And that leaves one major question. How much of Hollywood's darker history is documented, and how much has been created by online speculation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more Hollywood investigations, celebrity controversies, and stories behind the headlines. Because when allegations this serious start spreading online, the difference between evidence and rumor matters more than ever. I prefer this response. So, what do you think about this disturbing Hollywood mystery? Do you think the internet is connecting dots that simply aren't supported by evidence? Or do you believe Hayden Panettiere's accounts raise bigger questions about what young performers experienced behind closed doors in Hollywood? And what about the viral Mel Gibson claim? Right now, there is no credible evidence establishing that Gibson revealed what Panettiere supposedly witnessed on Epstein's Island, or that Panettiere was there at all. That's why the distinction between documented allegations and internet speculation matters. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more Hollywood mysteries, celebrity controversies, and entertainment investigations. Because when a headline sounds explosive, there's always one question worth asking. Where is the evidence? I prefer this response.